You Only Hide, Something for Kate. I wrote a fan letter to Paul Dempsey when I was 17. It's quite embarrassing to look back on now, as are most things from my teens, especially as it was very gushy, and well, I know him now. It's a disconcerting thing when you're supposed to be someone's equal in the industry, but the painful uncoolness of the past insists on lurking between you both at all times. Paul's most likely forgotten it, let's be honest, but I haven't. Something for Kate were a huge band for me in high school, particularly their 2001 album Echolalia. Something about Paul's lyrics on that record spoke directly to my teenage angst, my despair at not understanding my place in the world, my introspective and sometimes depressive nature. Music can be such a friend during those times. I also loved Paul's slightly Australian accent. It felt more personal and real and made him more relatable. No doubt he was one of a few artists who would influence me to sing in an Aussie accent years later. Writing this fan letter, I remember wanting so badly to let him know what his music meant to me. Like I'd just die if I didn't get these feelings out of my chest, onto the page, into the mail and under his eyeballs. The connection that you can feel with a songwriter is inexplicably intimate, as though they're the first person in the world to really get you. They've articulated the reasons for your loneliness so perfectly that all of a sudden you don't feel alone anymore. Your gratitude is of epic proportions, and it feels as though they must have written these lyrics especially for you. Of course, this connection is only directed one way, despite what a couple of slightly off-kilter fans have tried to convince me over the years. But it's hard to believe that at the time, especially at a young age. In 2001, not long after sending my letter and receiving a very gracious reply, I was asked to be part of the Tour de Force 3 to East Timor. This was a small tour of a few bands who Triple J were taking over to that troubled part of the world to play for the Aussie troops. I had recently won Triple J Unearthed, so I was suddenly in with the cool kids for a while. This was a huge deal for me. I'd never been on tour before. I'd literally just finished my final exams of Year 12. And not only that, Paul Dempsey was coming. That was the most exciting thing, not that we were heading into an exotic tropical malaria-rife war zone where we could get kidnapped by guerrillas. Paul Dempsey was coming. We left Darwin Airport in a Hercules, strapped into the sides with our camouflage outfits and our doxycycline tablets at the ready. My dad chaperoned me, as did Melissa Shenry, who works with the management company to whom I had just signed with a few months beforehand. They were there not just because I was only 18, but because I really didn't have anyone else on my team at that point. No band and certainly no crew. When we reached East Timor, I was hit firstly by the thickness of the heat in my face as we stepped off the plane, and secondly by its sheer raw beauty. Something all of us would take away from our experience was that East Timor would almost certainly be a major beach tourist destination, if it wasn't sadly in so much turmoil. I remember the open army trucks on which we rode from town to town, while little local kids ran alongside us shouting, "Aussie, Aussie, Aussie!" and we shout back, "Oi, oi, oi!" I wasn't sure why they liked us so much, but somebody told me that the locals felt as though the Australian Army had saved them from the incompetence of the UN, who seemed to spend all their money on new Land Cruisers. I have no idea if this is true, of course, but you could feel the warmth in the locals' attitudes. The little smiling children were just so cute, I wanted to gobble them all up. They all made us feel welcome. There was one show we played in a broken down old football stadium where the soldiers and sergeants were up in the grandstand under cover, while the locals stood on the grass directly in front of us, roped off. As many as could possibly fit were crammed in behind the ropes. Children, men, women, old and young, they were all enraptured, even though they wouldn't have been able to understand a word. When rain started to bucket down during my set, I remember thinking, oh well, we'll lose all the locals now. But I couldn't have been more wrong. They stayed for the entire show, soaked to the bone, shivering and entranced. Evidently, entertainment on this scale was a rare thing for this little town, and they weren't going to miss a thing. I looked at one woman in the front row who was holding her baby, both soaking wet, both with huge grins on their faces. I smiled back at them and couldn't stop smiling for the whole set. It certainly wasn't a holiday. On no other holiday have I been escorted to the toilet by a bodyguard holding a machine gun, or gone swimming at the beach with 6 men surrounding me, half pointing their guns in the water for sharks, half waving them around at the sand dunes in case of an attack. Not the most relaxing experience, but I thought it was pretty cool, and weirdly flattering that they obviously thought we were very valuable. I'm not sure how much the troops liked my music though. During one show, there were firecrackers going off, materials being burnt, dancing up the back, men sitting on top of buildings with their legs dangling off, and a plastic sex dummy floating over the top of the crowd. They heckled and shouted and wolf whistled, generally having a jolly good old time despite the earnest piano ballads happening on stage. In retrospect, I think Killing Heidi, the main act, were much more their vibe. But I don't remember being offended, mostly just terrified I was going to be trampled or eaten alive. The feeling that none of the troops had seen the bare shoulders of a female in a very long time was palpable. I felt like a dangling piece of rabbit meat in front of a pack of chained up hyenas. I'm sure my dad wasn't too relaxed in the wings either, poor guy. But the soldiers were all very sweet in person. One gentle boy with a sadness in his smile gave me a sweet note with a little gold cross inside that I wore around my neck for years after. During the trip, the bands all became comrades. The other musical acts, Groove Terminator, Killing Heidi, the Australian Army Band, and of course Paul Dempsey and I, got to know each other in the kind of way only people experiencing the same freaky adventure in a faraway place can. As you'd expect, by the end of it, I'd realised that Paul was just a regular guy, albeit very sweet and ridiculously intelligent. I never seemed to be able to shake the embarrassment of having written him that childish fan letter though. If only I hadn't, then maybe I could have fooled him into thinking I was totally cool and nonchalant. But the cat was out of the bag and was never going back in. I guess it's those times that force you to admit you're a human, despite how unattractive that option seems. Still, I never wrote another fan letter again. Are you kidding? Not worth the risk.